Okay. Well, lots of activity this week for sure, guys, and appreciate everyone to join. Yesterday was absolutely bonkers for sure. We did the live coding session and had an unusually large amount of people show up to take a look at what's being built in the sort of Claude code area that I personally been super excited by this week. Um, not I've been trying to get this to go live today, but apparently it's not going to happen. So we're doing this old school. We're recording it, so that'll be what it is. Rob, how's it going?
Great, great. Yeah, it was a monster week, eh? Claude Spark, just
Claude Flow. Yeah, Claude
Claude
Spark
Flow.
that was last week. We're
Right.
we're 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 already we're already past that. That was popular also. That was the underlying premise. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Boy, has that taken off. There was a lot of folks that showed up yesterday, and yep, that'll push the us pushing the calf up. That's for sure. We've got it. We got a great lineup today, Reuven. We've got three folks here. Let me just pull out my notes. So first off, Everett Clevin. And he comes to us by way of David Young's blood. And Everett's he's a founder of Evangelist Technologies. They're an AI-driven studio and or native product studio. And he's going to be giving us a quick demo on an ECS, Entity Component System, that is a simulation engine. So that should be pretty cool.
Oh,
And then
nice.
Chris Phillips, he's a member. He's going to be talking about improving MCP's identity layers, and he's going to be sharing the work on the first OIDC Federation sign-in to MCP. So that should be neat too. And then we've got Willie V3, and Willie V3 is back from New York City, the Big Apple, and he's the co-founder of Human Frontier Labs, a long-term member, and he's going to be doing a demo on a Next.js app that uses Sonic Pi, uses AI to write compositions. So it's an evolution of the music platform that he's been working on. So it should be pretty
Oh,
fun.
cool. Yeah, so we've been having a little technical difficulties with this, and we're thinking about potentially putting together a production team to sort of help with some of the logistics of getting the show off, in a more structured way. Anything you want to tell the community or solicit or
Yeah,
share?
absolutely. So that, as every new sort of tool comes along and we see the impact of drops like Claude Flow, um, the audience expands, and then we have the all of the chapters that are opening up around the world and the events that are taking place. The need for us to elevate across technical scalability and production value, and managing that growth, those growth vectors, is really apparent now. So yeah, Reuven, you've correctly identified that we need to put together a production team, and we'll be putting the signals out and starting the the comm channel on that for folks that have experience in that space, on the distribution side, restreaming, everything along those lines, and also how it supports the marketing team, the marketing group, and how we work together with that. So looking forward to it's going to be an exciting area of focus over the coming months. So if there's folks out there with experience in this space, feel free to reach out, touch in. We're putting the team together.
Yeah, we kind of I like to say it's kind of like community television, production value currently.
Yep.
We've kind of grown organically, and it does well. But today's a perfect example. I haven't been able to get the live version to work for some unknown reason, so we don't have a live broadcast. So having a team that could help with logistics, so I'm not trying to do it while ad-libbing is probably going to make it a little easier. So which is exactly what I'm currently doing. I'm trying to get the live version up and running while I'm talking to you guys,
Yeah.
in the hopes of sharing it on LinkedIn. So fingers crossed. I'm clicking the button. Oh, I saw a live stream thing start. Let's see. So Yeah, this week for me has been all about Claude Code and Claude Flow in particular. So I've been busy on lots of things. Let me show you. Let me show you guys. Let's Claude Code does rule for sure. All right. So Cloud Code, for those that aren't familiar, is a system that came out. Well, I think it was March at this point. That it essentially allows you to use Claude as a command line tool. It's very similar into things like Aider and other sort of CLI based tools. So it allows you to sort of interact with it. So on the weekend, I thought, hey, why not create a kind of Claude based, or last week I created a mechanism using sort of the Claude MD file to essentially interact with various parts of it. And then it occurred to me, well, I should actually create a library script to do that. So I launched that on Monday, and what do you know? Several thousand downloads later, the system was swarmed with interest, and we did a live cast yesterday, and 1,000 people showed up. But we can go from idea to product in moments. So I went from Monday, I should create this orchestration system, to getting Claude Code to build it, launching it on Tuesday, something like 50,000 downloads by Wednesday. It's amazing that you can go from idea to 50 freaking thousand downloads in less than like a day and a half. Like it's that in itself is mind blowing. So anyway, I'm on V43, and I noticed there was a quick bug, so I'm going to show you guys first how I'm solving the bug. And secondly, I'm going to show you how some of this stuff works. But from a high level, what this does is allows you to have multiple agents that can kind of collaborate with each other. So right now, while I'm talking to you guys, I have this system building. So we can go here. I basically said update to V45, and then I can, in this case I'm going to launch it. But before I do, check this out. This is the amount of code I developed since the scroll back up. There we go. So I've created 77,000 lines of TypeScript for this project so far. Complexity level is pretty good. And that, if you believe SCC, that's worth $10 million and would take 22 months with 41 people working on it.
Good
And
Lord.
that's just since Monday on this one project. And keep in mind, I'm actually working on a bunch of different things. So look at all these other tabs. These are all working on different things that I've got going on concurrent things. And this is just a hobby. I'm just doing this for the fun of it. Like, I got no real plan here other than I thought it'd be cool to build something. So the fact that I could build a project, if you believe this, even if it's a fraction of that, even if it's $100,000, that's still amazing. I could put out something worth $100,000 in a week, even if it's not $10 million. But so it's probably worth somewhere between nothing and $10 million. And the fact that it's got 50,000 downloads probably indicates it's probably worth close to $10 million, I would say. So this is a glimpse into the future of sort of the development process and the way that you can develop things quickly and iteratively, just from idea to thought. So right this morning, what I've been working on is I've been working on a sort of Roost code style extension, kind of like this, but for the Claude Flow system. So I haven't launched that yet, but you can see here that we've got tons, and this SCC ran before I even built that, so this number is probably even higher now. So you can see all the commands and all the structure. So I'm building that out right now. But what does it do? Let's just jump in here, and I'll clear this. So I'm running right now in my dev environment because I noticed there was a bug. So when you clone the system, you get a bin folder. The bin folder basically is a kind of wrapper that allows you to execute things. So in this case, but if you're running it locally using the npx command, you'd run, let's go back to the site for a sec. You're going to run first you're going to install it. So you're going to install Claude Code, and then once that's installed, you're going to go and you're going to run something like this to get it running, and then you can run different other commands. And I actually added a UI as well, which I'll show you here in a moment. But basically, you've got the ability to run like commands like start my project, and I'll show you some of this stuff. So back to getting this running, I'll go back here, and I'm going to run bin. So ignore the bin unless you're cloning the thing directly, Claude Flow, and then we'll run help. gives you a little help dialog, lots of different options. Keep in mind this is optimized for the Claude code system to basically work with the Claude code system as a kind of swarm of different coding agents that can collaborate and build collectively. So when you think about Rue code essentially had this idea that you could get this thing to automate through these various features, right? You've got the Spark orchestrator, but it was essentially sequential and task-based, meaning I couldn't get this thing to really work beyond the context of a single sort of threaded environment. It would build, it would create subtasks, it would come back to the regular task, and it would build. And it could build for hours. I think I had the longest run was 36 hours straight. But this is different in the sense that it's multi-threaded. It means I can run these in various threads. So in terms of I can run agents, I have memory, I've got coordination systems that allows the system to understand the context of all the other systems that are actually running. So in this case, if I want to run different modes, I can do Spark, I can do mode, and these are all versions. If I want to do swarms, I can do swarm, and I can do help on that as well. And this will show me different modes. So I've got modes that allow it to have to automatically determine the best approach, which is kind of what I use by default. It can research, it can do software development, and in this scenario, it orchestrates different agents. So if it took 36 hours to build, something previously, now I can spawn 10 of these and it'll take 3.5 hours. And what's more interesting is because Claude Max is basically all you can eat, it doesn't cost really anything other than a couple $100 that it cost me for the service. So it's orders of magnitude less. So my requesty bill went from like hundreds of dollars per week to basically nothing this week. I think it was like 30 or $40. And I use that mostly for MCPs at this point. So in this case, if I want to do, and if I want to execute something, I'll go here and I'll execute a swarm. I can just go here. Oh, I gotta do bin. I forgot. I'm running my local, and we'll do bin. And you'll see here that I've got the various components being executed. I might clean this up a little bit, but basically I'm creating a swarm, and then it's gonna do whatever it's gonna do. I'm gonna actually cancel that for now and show you a prettier version of this, which is basically the Spark mode. So Spark test. Now I get different modes, so I could run, for example, TDD if I wanted to run the test-driven development mode or DevOps. In this case, I'm just going to run Spark normally. And now we can see here that we're executing the different commands, and then it's going to start doing various things. I'm going to cancel it because I don't actually want to do it. But what I'm essentially doing is I'm injecting a combination of complex sort of task allocation. So it's saying, here's all the things it needs to do, here's how you need to operate, and it'll essentially build forever. Now, the other thing I did this morning, which is kind of cool. Again, I'm going really fast. Hopefully this makes sense. But the other thing you can do is I added the slash command option. So if you're more comfortable using Claude directly, you can just type Claude. And when you use Claude now, you've got the ability. Oh, I don't have the commands, so let's invoke those. So if I go Claude, I can go bin uh flow init spark force. This is going to create a Claude folder here, right here, called Claude. These give it different commands. So these commands are essentially giving it the ability to run. Oh, it didn't run. It didn't run for whatever reason. So I'm going to jump to another tab. The demo gods aren't smiling on me. So let's go here and I'll run it here. That was a dev environment, probably the reason. But anyway, when you slash, now you've got these slash commands. So these slash commands allow you to invoke each of the commands directly from within Claude itself. So, for example, the tutorial mode or MCP modes, and you can customize all this yourself as well using the command structure. So basically just MDs. And similar to the Rue structure, these provide guidance for each of the commands. And if you want to add your own command, all you need to do is basically go in here and add a folder or file name, and you've got different options. So these are basically telling you how to operate the swarm modes and things like that. So tons and tons of options. So let's go back here for a moment, see what else we got here. So I'm in this is a remote environment. So in the remote environment, I can just run Flow. I think I can do UI. I think it's UI. Oops, no, I gotta remember what my command is. Maybe it's /UI. I gotta remember. There's too many things for me to remember. Let's see here. Start. All right, let's do start. So UI. So now I have an entire UI system. Well, it's a command line UI anyway, that allows you to have an event bus, the orchestrator, and this gives you idea of what's happening. I'm just going to start all those, and then you're able to run the different minutes. So now the MCP server is running, the memory management system is running, and I can interact with those. I get different options as well for like orchestration. So if I want to go to number 3, I can see like what's in progress. So it provides a kind of track what all those agents are doing, because when you're running dozens of agents, it's hard to visualize that. So this provides the ability to see what each of the agents is actually doing. In this case, you've got a research agent, a coding agent, development analyst, things like that. So this is I'm not gonna lie, it's a work in progress. Like one guy juggling multiple projects and clients. If there's bugs, feel free to use Claude Code to fix my bugs and do a PR on it. Based on the amount of interest we're seeing, this could be big. I'm getting tons and tons of interest. Um, and I'm showing you, I'm just scratching the surface on all the capabilities of the system. Like let's just go right back here. You can see that I took a vibe approach to this. There was an image going around what a vibe coder looks like, where it's like a car with like a billion things attached to it. This is totally that, but that's okay. So we got the memory systems, we got monitoring, we've got all kinds of different things. The moral of the story: all you need to do is point Claude at Claude Flow, and it'll orchestrate everything for you. That's the simplest way to think about it. And if you run into bugs, there's probably bugs. I've got a ton of stuff. Let me know, or just fork the repo and point Claude at it and say go fix that, and you should be in a good spot. I've also got Rue modes integration for those who are sort of switching between. There's a lot of work I need to do on the MCP side of things, so it does have MCP integration. I typically right now I'm using CLIs. I find them more secure and easy to use. But again, you can build pretty much anything you want with this thing. I'm building all kinds of crazy stuff, and my next major release, other than some minor bug fixes, is going to be the actual VS Code extension. So I pushed the fork out. You can probably go to, what is it, the UV or 44 UI, and you'll see that there's a UI folder. Still some work to do, but this will give us VS Code style interface. So that'll be cool. Let me pause for a moment. Any questions from the crew here? You guys quiet bunch today? Or did
I
I
think everyone's just trying to take it in.
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot.
I will, one quick question, like how much of how would you say it, these capabilities that we're seeing here are already kind of built into the Claude code, and you're just adding kind of a nice layer or accessibility, and
None
how
of
much
it.
of them are,
None of
are
it.
you,
So Claude Claude
okay.
Code Claude Code essentially allows you to invoke coding. And so what I've done is I've given it the ability to do swarms, memory, and orchestration. None of that exists within Claude Code. So you can try to using the approach that I did last week. If you guys remember the Claude Spark files, you can kind of fake it a little bit and using MD files and get it, and then you can create additional terminal sessions and kind of get it to a rudimentary version of what I did. I took this to like a whole new level. I've got memory, I've got orchestration, I've got swarming. So you can see here the memory folders and various other components. It's substantial. So I've got agent orchestration systems and sessioning and lots and lots of features. None of the coordination features exist within the structure of Claude Code. It should. Now it does.
I have a question with the cloud code and your code flow.
Sure.
What plan is it recommended for it? Like there's max 5x, max 20x, or it depends on the project size.
I think you don't need to spend $100 first and foremost. Like I'm a crazy developer doing 50 things at once. I just showed you I did apparently $10 million just in this one project. But if you're getting started, the $20 plan will work. Now you might not get a lot, and you might max it out quickly if you're doing the swarms. So if you're using the $20 plan, maybe start with a little more targeted, and maybe use the Spark option /Spark and start with a single thread. Maybe try 2 threads, but don't go to like 3 or 4. You're probably gonna max out your plan too quickly. The
My
$100,
project, my project is 200K tokens around that.
yeah,
That's the
yeah,
size.
yeah, that's nothing. Yeah, so you should be good with a $20 plan for that. The reason I'm maxing it out is I'm running concurrently, dozens of agents, right? And I'm maxing out the $200 plan by running like 15 concurrent agents, across multiple VS Code instances. So if you're not me, you're probably going to be okay with the $100 or $20 to start. And if you max it out, just upgrade. But it's substantially cheaper than Rue. Like if I'm paying $100 a day for Rue, I'm now paying $200 a month.
Mm-hmm.
So the cost is substantially less. Everett, nice to meet you. I see you get your hand up.
Yeah,
Get.
yeah, it's great. It's great to meet you. Honestly, you are working on like the exact same space that I've been like focusing on, but it's amazing to see this particularly applied to like the most cutting edge like instantiation of an agent that we've seen so far. So it's really cool. My question on Claude Flow particularly is on, the communication side. What medium are you using to enable the agents to communicate? Are you using particular protocols? There's so many different options out there, and maybe you vibe coded that, but like, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that either.
This is a question I get a lot, and what you're really asking me is, am I using A2A, ADP, or MCP? And
No,
if
no, actually.
no,
Oh, what I'm actually asking is like, in terms of the, so I guess if you are using MCP, I guess that would answer my question. The communication, maybe like schema, is also what I was kind of thinking about. And then if everything's just happening over the network and like the memory buffers are just like maybe JSON files or just running over the network, that's something else
I've got
too. But
2 implementations. So one
okay,
is just a JSON style memory and coordination buffer, and you'll see that in the memory folder. And it's essentially that is giving it a structured memory. It's nothing too complicated. The other, and this is, you'll need to dig through the various settings, and there's a lot of them. Is I'm using SQLite, and the SQLite is information in a pseudo vector style. Now it isn't actually vector, but I'm mimicking the structure of a similarity search and structure within SQLite, and then saving it in that in basically a sort of more structured SQL versus JSON structure. Now I could take that further, and if you look at like work that I've done in my Spark 2, I've actually implemented a true vector implementation using FIAS implementation of vector, which is amazing. If you're going to use vector, that's probably the way to go. I
yeah,
didn't go with that because I built this on Monday, but
yeah,
just to throw it out there. But if I was like, if I was like going to build this as like a startup, which I'm not, I would probably go with something like that. And if you look at my fact implementation from a few weeks ago, that actually uses the FIAS approach. But I built that in Python. This is built in TypeScript. This is like a jigsaw puzzle of all the crazy shit I've built over the last month.
yeah.
Right?
That's great, and I love the CLI. So amazing.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's a little bonkers.
Quick question
Alex,
on the MCP, Reuven. If you install Claude Flow, does it automatically set up a bunch of MCP for you?
no, but I'm
Or do you have
thinking
to
about
manually do that? Because I find that setting up MCPs in Claude is basic. Claude is a pain.
you are not alone. So the takeaway from Claude Code MCPs is this: it only works locally currently, as far as I can tell. So if your MCP is a remote, like you're using Composio or one of those MCP run type services, it isn't going to work. So if you want to use those services, you have to create an MCP abstraction. There's lots of them around now, but basically allows you to run a local version that then goes out to the remote version. I don't know why they did it that way. So
They
to be
changed the
honest,
schema, Reuven. David, I'll post an example MCP configuration in the chat.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
so
I've looked everywhere, man. It's so easy in Ru and Klein, but it's so painful. It's the most weakly done part of Claude Code.
yeah, so what I did, because I 100% agree with you, it's a little bit awful. I'm using CLIs. You can create a CLI, sub CLIs in literally seconds. If I need to interact with Supabase, I just use the Supabase CLI. If I need to interact with AWS, I use Bodo or something. So I'm using the CLIs, and then as part of the orchestration layer, I'm basically saying use those CLIs. And that works amazing. Now, the one part that you have to be very careful about in this is I'm using the dangerously whatever parameter. And if you're using this against a production environment, well, don't. It's a bad idea. This is beta. Did I mention I built this on Monday? You probably want to test the crap out of it before you point this at anything near a real production environment. The second thing you're going to notice, this thing is power hungry. If I pointed it at my Hugging Face system for the SAP test thing I've been working on for my machine model, and first thing it did is went and bought the most expensive possible GPU. And I told it never use that GPU. And then 3 iterations in, it did it again. It seems to just want to use the most powerful tools available to it, and I can't get it to stop doing that. I don't know, no matter how I try. So the only way to get around that is to put in secondary limitations. So you have to proxy it, basically.
Okay, good to know.
Alex, you got a question?
Yeah, I do. So, Roof, like, let's say we had an idea to build like just something brand new right now. Like, how would you? Are you changing your approach now with Cloud Flow, or with Cloud Flow versus what you've been doing in the past when it came to using Spark? Like, or are you
No.
now just typing in the idea, or are you doing deep research inside of using OpenAI and kind of using that
No,
process still? Or,
Well, Claude Code has the web search capability built right in, so I don't need
right.
Perplexity. And so all I need to do in the sort of research phase is it basically says use the web search capability in Claude Code, and it goes out, finds it iterates, and creates the deep research all directly in the system. Now, I have a tendency to want to do my deep research using like either the Claude desktop or the mobile app or ChatGPT mobile apps. I'm just sitting, chilling, thinking about what I want to build, and then
Right.
I'll use deep research there, and then I copy the file in. That's what I did for the VS Code extension that I've been working on. So I basically used the deep research capability in ChatGPT, connected it to this, give me a plan to build a cursor style UI as a VS Code extension.
Okay, cool. So, but in the past, you had like a pretty robust prompt that you were using to kind of like start the project and say, I want a full implementation plan, PhD level. You kind of talk about Dino, you bring up all these things. Are you now just simply describing your idea, or are you still defining kind of how you want to approach the project as part of your initialization of the project?
That's all built in. So that's
Okay, that's what I
built in.
figure.
So if you look at the primary Claude .md prompt that gets created in the root directory, that's kind of the
Okay.
overarching guidance system, and then the .claude folder are the sort of subcommands. So I've recreated the entire root code system in Claude but with the additional ability for multi-threading, swarms, and other sort of orchestration that Rue doesn't do.
Okay, so you're just starting a project by saying, here's my idea, go make it. That's like, you're literally just describing it now.
Well, yeah. So when I showed you guys that project, which seems like ages ago now, that I did the sort of ultrasonic system that basically embeds secret commands encrypted in the 18 to 20 kilohertz range for audio, I used this system to basically say, what's the most complicated thing you can possibly build that's never been built? That was my guidance. And then I pointed at that and I let it run for about 20 hours, and it popped out the ultrasonic system. Just and if you guys saw the other day, it totally works. a lot of people think that it was crazy and might infringe on people's privacy or whatever, but that's a secondary problem. It totally works.
So did you say the difference between the Rue code setup and this is that there's no native extension for VS Code at the moment, so you're interacting with Claude within VS Code at the terminal.
Correct. Each, and then I spawn multiple terminals, and I can have I can have a swarm on top of a swarm on top of a swarm, and then I've got different models for the swarms based on sort of. Oh, one thing I learned: you can't do evolutionary AI processes with Claude Code. It stops it. I have not been able to get around evolutionary structures. If anyone figures out a way to do that, it basically stops it. I get a big giant error. It says no AI allowed, which is interesting.
What do you mean by evolution?
As an alignment issue?
Alignment issue. It's 100% alignment. So I built a secondary system to handle evolution independent of it, which I'll maybe roll out next week. But if you're trying to do like an evolutionary swarm, it'll stop you. You have to call it like unsupervised learning or something, but it doesn't let you go down the sort of modular self-evolving sort of code structures, which is unfortunate. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. Hey, how are you guys? Yeah, interesting. I think someone said there on LinkedIn the other day that AI will come from a product, not from an LLM. But I have a question, just a basic one, because I work with teams, and how do you manage multiple people working with Claude Flow when? So the way I'm thinking about this is that you'd have a Jira board with tickets on it, and an AI could pick a ticket, or a person could take out a ticket. So to integrate AI directly into teams and solve that part of the problem. How does because you talked about MCP there and not being really great. You talked about CLI being your tool of choice. What's the process for Claude Flow pulling tickets off a Jira board?
Jira is easy. So Jira, basically all I did there is I did a test on Jira, actually. I was curious. And I created .env, and then I basically said, use the token for Jira and this API endpoint and go do it. That's it. That's all I said. And it went and figured it out. And
so you used the API.
I used the API, and it did it in like seconds. Like it literally just figured it out. And it was so easy I didn't even think about it. So for a lot of things, all you really need to do, and because it has the web search capability built in, it goes and just figures it out. And because I have multi-threading, one of those agents is just going and doing that while the other agents are doing other things.
So you just create your env, put in the API, and then you said, go do it. Just go fetch it. Can you say like, go fetch a ticket, or
I just said go use the Jira API to get the latest tickets and fix them.
Nice. Okay,
and
thank
then,
you.
And then I didn't. One thing to watch out for, I didn't tell it to do the commit. It went and just did that without me asking. So you have to be really careful. It has a tendency to go and do things that it thinks you want, even if you don't want it to do that. Like you notice that I've got version 10.043 or 44 now of this system. It's because it kept publishing the damn npm. And it did it dozens of times. I wasn't paying attention. So I came back and suddenly I'm like on version 22 of the npm because it's published it to the npm 20 freaking times. Then I had to go say it never published the freaking npm. So
that's funny.
Yeah,
they make them helpful.
Too helpful. Like I don't want you to publish it until I tell you to publish it. So yeah, there's definitely some guidance things that we need to work through there. It's a little, it wants to be too helpful. I know we're out of time here.
Thank you.
I know this is so. I know we get some great guests lined up here. Rob.
Yep. I just want to do a quick check. I know Willie V3 had to hop off a little early, and so let me just see if he's still with us or not. Willie, you still here?
No,
I think he had to run. All right, so Everett, nice to meet you and welcome.
Yeah, thanks so much. Honored to be here and to demo some more cool tech. And honestly, just it's great to be here with a bunch of other vibe cutters, a bunch of other folks looking to push the envelope. And, you know, I think particularly throughout the last 2 years, you know, there's just been a lot of pain knowing what these technologies can do, but like not quite getting there. And in these last 2 months, it's really different. It's really different. Claude 4 and Gemini 2.5 Pro, I genuinely think we've seen a big difference. In fact, the project I'm about to show you would not have been completed if Claude 4 Opus had not come out. So even simple things like setting up your debug environment, I think are huge. But without further ado, I'm just going to go ahead and jump into my project here, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Okay. So, hi everybody, I'm Everett, and I've been working on this fever dream that I've had since ChatGPT came out in 2023. And I have to say, it's taken a long time. It took me probably about 1.5 years, if not almost 2 years, to figure out that I wanted to build this simulation engine. But Archetype is this effectively a simulation engine purpose-built for multi-agent orchestration. Context provisioning at scale is hard. Right now, honestly, our biggest limitations are rate limits from closed source providers. And I've got a solution for that, but that's actually not a part of this project. There's some other great tools that I'd love to talk more about, but I don't have a ton of time, so I'm just going to dive right into this. So Archetype is very similarly architected after other game engines. Game engines like Unity employ the entity component system architecture to decouple state from all of your different processors and schema definitions in your components. And this is essentially the diagram of what the code base looks like. The point of Archetype, like I said, is to enable support for large-scale simulations. It's not intended for real-time use cases, which is great because we don't necessarily need to run at like full real, like 100 hertz timing for running agents. But the beauty of how this ended up working is that the combination of the technologies that I've used and the way that this ended up being architected enables me to run multiple worlds in parallel, running on thread-safe like transactions on individual archetype tables. And so you're able to run multiple archetypes in parallel, which are like classes of what you could call maybe like a player or an enemy. And you could run those worlds in parallel as well. The goal being something very similar to what Claude Flow has, which is like recursive agent simulation. So I want a personal agent that's better than everybody else's, right? Then I want my agent to go and simulate the potential outcomes and even run simulations themselves recursively. I had a few key references and prior art. I think that's critical for any vibe-coded project, that you reference something that's kind of canonical and has a lot of robust like thought that went into it. And so I referenced that here. And as much as there's like all this complexity on the back end, the scripting side is really what I've been focused on, because I've been trying to limit the complexity by which a large language model needs to know, like the amount of context that it really needs to know to be able to write good simulation scripts. And so we have a kind of a traditional usage pattern for where you define components, you define a processor, and I'm using daft data frames, which are lazily evaluated and which enables query optimization. And it's backed by Rust. So the team behind Daft set the world record for S3 reads and writes. And the in-memory format is Apache Arrow, so you get 0 copy reads and writes. So these are a bunch of big data technologies. That's my background. And the whole goal is that it makes data processing super efficient. We support sync and async, and right now I've got just toy examples. But the next integration is adding OpenAI client, chat completions, which the same DAF team has demonstrated to be able to. They scrape like all of GitHub to go and try to find the most cracked like Rust developers, and they saw massive like 80 queries per 80 completions per second on VLM on a GPU that they were running. I think it was a 8 by A100. So there's no rate limits if you're running your whole stack on open source. I'm just going to dive into the code here and show you
Last
that
couple of moments
simple
there,
demo. And so if we just run this really quickly, our simple simulation here is just updating a position based on a velocity, and see that those positions do end up updating here. It's nice that you got those data frame visualizations, but so you can see what your data looks like. But I think I'm out of time, and that's everything I've got for you.
No, I think so. Explain the practical applications of what you're doing here. So
My goal is to ensemble LLM responses to explore multiple perspectives in parallel. The most powerful prompting technique that I found, especially initially when I was working with ChatGPT, was exploring different perspectives, like orthogonal or inverted, or just different ideas. And the whole purpose of this is to give LLMs really a kind of constrained scripting primitives for them to go and script their own simulations. And then the goal for that is to enable like super intelligence utilization. Because currently I believe a majority of us as humans are the ones that are really holding these systems back, as opposed to, kind of the other way around. So really,
but how do you want to use it, Everett? Like, do you want to give it a task, or be like, hey, like help me make like how are you actually you used a positional one here? Is this like a military use case where it's like I want to know where this tank's going to be in 20 minutes, and you're simulating that?
It certainly could. The system is generalized for a lot of different use cases. Real time, like I mentioned, probably wouldn't work as well, but it's intended to support mostly code generation initially, and then particularly act as like a personal agent engine. So long term, this has the scalability potential to serve entire enterprises. It scales on Ray as well, so it should be able to scale to petabyte scale at, without a ton of extra features, just given the technologies that it has. So enterprise knowledge management, enterprise agents, running a bunch of agents in parallel, and then using a bunch of big data engineering best practices. The whole purpose for that is just enabling a better, a more constrained or a scalable agent ecosystem without rate limits.
So you're using a multi-step process to do sort of introspection into the problems and data analysis?
Yes, that's kind of the hard part, is that this is still very general. One thing I'd like to do here this weekend is take the Tencent persona hub that has 350,000 personas, and have those simulate, to potentially do like synthetic customer discovery with them. So I should be able to ask effectively like 350,000 AI agent personalities whether they would be interested in some product, maybe even enrich like the context by which they're viewing this product from that perspective, and then say who's interested in this, and that would provide some value. The other side of this is also being able to run like sub processes like Claude code. I think there's still some gaps here that would, I think, take it to like actually integrating Cloud Code directly into the processors. But the goal is to just let the LLMs like discover emergent patterns themselves and enable like an expressive cognitive architecture scripting system.
I love it. I think you're building some really cool stuff here. So could I use a GPU to sort of create some parallel processes using this?
Yeah, absolutely. GPUs would accelerate this tremendously. The great thing is that this works locally as well as on distributed systems. I still need to test this, but that's on the roadmap here to work soon. Like all of these technologies that I'm using are already built for distributed systems.
Yeah, this is really cool. I'm gonna have to take a deeper dive into this. So you and I have a like mind here because I think this is some of the stuff that I'm working on is very similar conceptually. Your implementation looks a little more elegant, I would say, but it's cool. Lots of interesting opportunities here for this kind of recursive thought processes that go into these. Like, is it true? You know, what do I need to do? And sort of you could probably create a really cool swarm algo here as well.
Yeah, well, and so here's what I struggle with. The most painful experience of prompting for me is that feeling like every response is arbitrary. To some extent, like most of these models are like giving us a piece of truth. And at least based on the training data that they're seeing, so long as you're not like prompting bias in it. And I think it's really hard to not prompt your own biases in it. And so I think scale is actually how you get out of that. You say, like, you can just be as biased as you possibly need to be. You don't have to worry about how you're prompting it. But if it's going and exploring like orthogonal perspectives, different perspectives that you just have this big enum on, like you're now adopting a statistical methodology for evaluating responses. And I think that's a much better approach.
But that's fundamentally how LLMs and models are built and operate. They're statistically indeterministic. So you can't make them deterministic. They are fundamentally statistically indeterministic.
Yeah, I think we have to lean into that the more that we rely on these models. So the like for us to continue to make a bunch of decisions based on one response from one model, I think is kind of insane. Considering you know, this is why I've been wanting to work on this, is because if it's low cost to get a bunch of different perspectives on a single prompt, then like by all means we should at least have an understanding of what that distribution of that response should look like. Yeah, there's different ways that you can structure responses, right? Like anyway,
how do you determine how many simulations you run? Like, I mean, you give it a general idea. I want to simulate how many customers I'm going to get next December. Like, there's some sort of, I mean, like process you're running. I mean, how do you determine how many simulations it's going to require to, and then also the accuracy of that? You know, is it just, are we just playing like a game here to see like kind of what the system thinks? Like, ultimately, when the rubber hits the road and December rolls around, does it actually, you know, does it actually pencil out? So I'm just trying to figure out like where do you see like the main value of running these simulations, and how do you know that it's actually going to get you closer to truth?
It's risk mitigation for the most part. It's saying it's not over investing in a particular approach and making sure that you're exploring the solution space. And I think more than anything, this will probably end up being used for evaluations more often.
Insurance.
Right. And on top of just like, you know, you've got, yeah, I mean, we're looking to delegate more and more of our cognition to these types of systems, right? And it's really difficult to operate as a human without bias. And to me, this is a means of us being able to interact with these systems without like overly introducing our biases, because it's able to go and explore those different possibilities. And again, like when you talk about simulations, like that's just like the way that the system is built. This is a state machine where you have unified context, and the first agent I'm going to build is going to have the same querying capabilities as these data frames. So they're going to be able to query data at scale just as well, and be able to process that data at scale.
So I think that, I mean, bias is obviously top of mind for many or all of us, and certainly something we need to mitigate, and like take out of our shit, right? Protect us from ourselves, kind of thing. And I think AI obviously and LLMs have shown a potential path forward to help with overall bias considerations. But I think oftentimes, at least from what I hear and observe, we tend to discredit or forget about intuition, which is, in my opinion, like the opposite of bias. And if we can engineer and or recreate systems of synthetic intuition systems, which is, you know, more or less a different word for bias, in favor of the intended outcomes of the use case scenario. And so I see this as being potentially complementary to both sides of that coin in our usage. And I also wanted to point out, while at the mic, there was another comment earlier that was a good question Max had. So based on, is this based on, or does it utilize any tree searching algorithms, heuristic search algorithms, or Monte Carlo, et cetera? And I know that like that's right up your alley, Everett. So I wanted to.
Yeah, that's a primary goal for the platform. That's probably one of the very first features I'm looking to build as soon as I get to an agent. But I have to get OpenAI client calls inside UDFs with semaphore concurrency. Is a couple of things I have to figure out. But like you said, Uvi, like, if anything, my goal is to empower the actual, like, the kind of this nascent, like, pure experience of vibe coding where you just lean into intuition and you're leaning into like the present moment of what you want to explore. And hopefully this is like going to be helping you do that homework, and open yourself up to the limit, not just the limits of your own like creativity, but beyond that.
Yeah, no, it's we're in an interesting, and what are you using to build this stuff? Like what's your dev flow look like?
Yeah, so I'm usually using Claude Code at this point. Like, I'm not even really gonna pay for my like cursor subscription as much anymore, especially because the tab completion kind of already works. Claude Code, but I'm pretty much consistently just using the latest models, and attaching myself to that because they end up being the best. I do a lot of manual inspecting and like, I have a much harder time like trusting like generated code bases if I don't know that the LLM is using primitives that I trust. And so like a majority of my coding workflows take some sort of authoritative reference, whether that's a large code base or some script or, you know, even an article. And I ask it to build off of that, because I know that there's, you know, I feel like it's less likely to kind of collapse on itself and introduce a bunch of errors.
Yeah, that makes sense.
This particular these. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, is it written? Are you developing in Rust or Python or what?
Python. This is all Python for right now. The backend's almost a majority of the backend, like the actual technologies that I'm using are using Rust. And I would love to build in Rust. I'm just not as familiar with Rust yet.
Rust is awesome.
That's on the roadmap. It is amazing. It is amazing.
The biggest issue with Rust I find with the sort of automated development, and Claude Code actually proves this a bit, is the compilation process. So you have to do it as like a sub thread that doesn't block and timeout within Claude Code. Right? You get that 2 minute. You get the 2 minute timeout issue with Claude Code, which is a bit of a pain. Right. And maybe someone else has figured out how to make that go longer than 2 minutes, but I've yet to figure that out. And so if you're constantly doing compiles, and as we know, Rust is not known for doing fast compilation. There's techniques, I guess, to do it faster, but for the stuff I'm doing, 2 minutes doesn't generally cut it.
Right.
I just want to and then for your table here, guys, we've got We still have Chris Phillips up if we want to give him the last few minutes.
Sure. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry, guys. We've been super chatty today.
Really neat stuff. Brilliant, Everett.
Yeah.
Hello,
Feel free to reach out to
jump
me
in
on my
to stop sharing the
LinkedIn or
screen.
GitHub if you have questions.
Hello, Rob. I have a quick question. Did you ever face
we don't have time for that right at the moment. We'll push up to the after show. Chris, take it away.
So my name's Chris Phillips. I'm an identity architect. And Everett, if you could stop sharing the screen, I can start sharing mine. Awesome. Thank you. So just a couple slides. There is going to be a demo. Pause for a second, take a breath. We were talking about LLMs and all these kinds of things, and I'm going to ask you all to shift a little bit and let's talk about multi-context protocol and about some of the things on how they get configured and stuff. So some of the challenges that we were talking about today about how tokens end at a certain time, or it's just a pain in the butt. We're absolutely right. There's a lot going on in that space right now, and the MCP layer is got a challenge with identity specifically. Now, of course, the identity guy says there's a challenge, but I think everyone else is experiencing it as well, because the security model is dealing a lot of stuff with localhost and a no-auth endpoint. And one of the things in my background for the last 2 decades is operating a SAML federation or a multilateral federation where you could sign in with your institution's credentials into other services. So single sign-on at scale globally. And right now in the MCP side of things, it's pretty challenged in the sense that I can only either run things on localhost or I have to do this. And we heard today that there was a comment. It was like, yeah, that MCP is not starting up, or I have to run it on localhost, or how does the authorization happen? And to me, this is the world in the federated space. I'm trying to bring it into the MCP side. Where this has value is that we can start dealing with more single sign-on and a lot more certainty. Because right now, when you sign in or use one of the authorizations, you don't know, that MCP service doesn't really know who you are. And that knowing who you are in that deterministic statement that we heard a few minutes ago from Everett about that non-deterministic versus deterministic, identity things need to be deterministic because that's how you deal with access permissions and those kinds of things. And what I've been doing is I've been working on enhancing the MCP side of things with existing protocol called OpenID Connect Federation. And the OpenID Connect Federation is the standard from the OpenID Foundation, same one where OpenID Connect is built on OAuth 2. So this goes together like peanut butter and jelly in a sandwich. So you can use the same MCP libraries, you could use the same authorizations, and use the same JWT bearer token with the Federation stuff to sign in. And one of the things that a lot of people are commenting on is it's easy to sign into things within your own institution when you have an identity provider of one. But what happens is this moment you get out of your own domain is the moment that, how do you sign into there? How do I get authorized into agentics.org from some other organization? I would have to have an account there. And that's not a great identity and access management story. So this is about cross-domain token sharing in a safe and secure fashion. And it's tamper-proof because it has cryptographic groundings on it, and you can use it anywhere in the circle of trust. Now, time check here. I'm not going to be able to get into all the things.
Yeah.
So I want to jump into what does it actually look like. And so I have a repo that's private right now that's publishing a library, and what you're going to see is just an example of me having a sign-in with GitHub. I have built an OAuth or I have an application registered in GitHub on the OID Feds test. I've created that and I've registered this one on localhost. You'll notice that the redirection URL is on localhost. So I'm signing in with my GitHub credential into the local application. This is running in a Docker Compose right now in my VS Code on my machine, actually. So when I tap sign in, what happens is you get this JWT over the wire, And then here in the Federation, the app or the MCP for the Federation it's now building and adding in the OpenID Connect Federation. So what has happened is my Docker Compose, when it became instantiated, said, I'm a Federation. Here's my signing key for my token. And this MCP that we're going to be signing into will also be in that federation. So you can have any number of those in there. So if you think about how someone has to use MCP to sign in each individually to each MCP, this gives you an opportunity to use the same token to sign into any of the MCPs that are part of the federation. So when I go to test the MCP server, you'll see that it's part of, has the token, it has my identity from GitHub, and this is a web interface. But really, what we want is we want to see this in the real MCP side of things. So what I have is I've already signed in and I have a bearer token in my MCP inside VS Code in my local federation, so localhost here. And now I can actually interact in with VS Code and say who, let's go up a little bit. Just check on the who am I. So now this is a pure MCP call and it has the information about the federation. So the federation in this case is the issuer of localhost, but this could be businessname.com and they say, oh, I'm going to allow others into this federation. Or if I want to have an MCP in my fleet of things at my organization, you only need this one JWT to be able to be in there. And then you can do interesting things like compare, is this person the same as the person who authored this code, for instance? So what we're doing is we're bringing that information into the JWTs and the MCP space so you can evaluate, is this person truly who they say they are? Is this the person that you think it is? As opposed to having anyone do that or have your token change. The other thing is about demonstration proof of possession. That's one of the pieces where the token would be bound to your device so that you can have certainty that no one can lift the token and use it somewhere else. What I've been doing with this is building an open source library. And one of the things I'm working on is, Reuven, that I've been inspired by your NPM or NPX installation to be able to do the delivery of the packages and those kinds of things. So I'm building base NPM packages for this, as well as a boilerplate for the MCP elements. I have a long form demo on this, but about 15 minutes long. And I welcome questions, and I'm just going to glance at the meeting chat. I'm really mindful of time. So, and I'm really appreciate the time here today. It's a great
Yeah, and I apologize for not giving you a lot of time. That was probably my fault for blabbing on too much. But what you're doing is really useful and important for anyone using MCPs. And I think we discussed this a little bit earlier, where some of the MCP concerns, especially with remote MCPs, are particularly vulnerable to interception of data leakage issues. Especially when using untrusted third-party streamable HTTP, right? And you're addressing those concerns.
Exactly. And I have, I'm a member of the OpenID Foundation and on the working group that actually is part of the OpenID Connect Federation space. I've been part of it for the last couple of years. And we have a really awesome opportunity here to have this kind of technology into the space and be adopted. Because if you're going to try to do MCP at scale, like if I were to use an example of, say, Spotify, if I want to have an MCP for me, my agent, to go and say, what was Chris's listening history and do some really interesting things, and then say, is my billing up to date? Or if I'm going to use a third, or if Spotify says, I'm going to use a third party, and I'm going to say, hey, you do this for my customers. I'll add you into my Spotify federation. So it's that federation around the service. Then you can say that token that I used to sign in, which, by the way, you sign into Spotify typically with Facebook or Google or something else, right? What happens is you can decorate the token and then say stamp of approval. Aha, that is the person. And that is unchangeable and unmodifiable, because what happens is you have the token being able to be issued by a central the CA and signed there. So I'm looking for interested parties. My information is on the last screen here. And if you have interesting use cases, and I know people are suffering from MCP-itis on signing into things and tokens rolling off and all those kinds of things. So I know this is a problem. And if you have a problem in any of your projects, hit me up. And if you have insight or say, hey, what if can I do this? That'd be great.
It's pretty cool. I think that if you're doing this in an enterprise context or even integrating secondary systems like MCPs as part of your workflow, the idea of auth is essential. And so you've got NPX installed, which I love. Or you've implemented that, or is that coming soon?
It's implemented, and so the Docker Compose demo is using its own libraries to be able to do things. So it would be an NPX install. So there's the federation management part, and then there's the MCP core, which you would be integrating with. And my intent is I'm looking at meta MCP maybe, because what you'll see in any of the any air quotes agentics people that are saying, hey, sign in one place, they're using basically a proxy. And what you see here is a proxy, and it's the MCP server's got some extra pieces on it to have just decode the token with the extra elements to it. So there's more here, and yeah.
Yeah. So love it. I love what you're doing. Really cool stuff. This is and I again apologize. You probably needed 15 minutes to really get into what you're doing.
Yeah.
This is really useful, really useful stuff.
Yeah. So take a look. There's a video for this with the long form. Basically, you got the the espresso form of this, and yeah.
This is huge. That is, especially for OIDC, that's critically important for Cloud Federation of identity management and access controls. You have to set that up anytime that you're integrating with a cloud provider.
Amen.
Reuven, I have a question.
Yeah.
Can I ask you?
Yes.
Hello, Reuven.
Sorry. Yeah. Go for it.
So as you know, Claude Max is not unlimited token. They not provide. So did you ever face any token issue like out of limit or issues? Did you ever face?
I do. I'm using the $200 one, so it happens when I'm running concurrent processes. I run I timeout says come back in a few hours or whatever. It's there. I started with 100 because I was seeing how far I could push that one. I ended up being frequently running out on that one. But again, I'm using a ton of concurrent processes and things. So that's probably my issue.
Okay, understand.
Yeah. So I would it depends what you're doing. Like if you're a developer and you're spending as much time as I am, which is all day, running things, and $200 is just the cost of doing business. If you're in a business, expense it, right? And if you're independent like me, use it as a tax deduction or something, so that's it's just it's part of your tool set. But I don't think there's any better value. A lot of people are saying, well, why don't you use like a local model like DevStroll or CodeStroll and stuff like that? I just don't find them as capable, at least in the things that I'm doing. Not as far as the state of the art goes. I don't think anything comes close to me in terms of capability and cost. This is the best.
Okay.
Unless I'm open to other people's opinions. And by the way, this is the open mic portion. So if there's something someone wants to show or tell or discuss, this is your chance. All right. Yeah, it's been an interesting week to say the least. I love working in AI. Like I know there's like a lot of haters out there, whatever, but we get to create stuff. But it's literally the line between idea and creation is non-existent. Like I say this every week, and I think I've proven it by this point, but there's nothing we can't create. Like in the more complex the problems, And when you look at, like, we've been doing these AI hackerspaces for a little over a year now, and you look at the things that we were building a year ago. Like, I went back and looked at some of the first episodes, or whatever we call these things, like from a year ago. It's like it's almost laughable at how impressed we were with these simplistic things that we were creating. We're like, oh my God, I just created a website or something, and I can do that in like 10 minutes now. And you know, so and you don't realize where you are in the exponential curve when you're in that exponential curve. And you know, it's like I remember I was watching the video and I was bragging, I just created 10,000 lines in a week. Well, now I create 10,000 lines in like 5 minutes, 2 minutes, right? It's and
Yeah,
we don't even think anything of it. 10,000 lines is incredible.
that's
Right?
crazy.
I think
Well,
along
That's
the
kind of,
yeah,
it's also
along
hard
those
to
lines.
review.
Yeah. Sorry,
Oh,
Everett.
sorry, Chris. I took up already too much of your time, Chris. You go ahead.
Well, I think that self-awareness on that knee of the curve, absolutely. And this is such a leading edge on it. The trailing edge is so far back that bringing that forward is that's the heavy lift right now, because people are, it will become second nature. Oh yeah, I can make that website, or those 10,000 lines. Like, all the work that goes into that is kind of lost on people, and then it's, it's a function in Excel then or something, that they only encounter it in those contexts. Like some of the Federation stuff, they're not, MCP is still, what's that?
The further
So
Yeah.
people are
GitHub's
down
hack.
that curve, the more you're going to give them an existential crisis once you tell them what's going on. And I've explained some things to people, and they're like, that's not, you can't do that. And I'm like, no, it's going on, it's happening. And they don't believe it.
I gave a presentation to a very large tech company yesterday, and this is senior leadership. And these guys are supposed to be like the top AI guys in the world. And the response to when I showed them like building their app in real time while I was giving the presentation, I literally loaded my PowerPoint in VS Code and then said, what do you want to build? And while I was giving my presentation, it built it. And then by the end of it, they're like, WTF, like, you are like, us collectively, we're so far beyond what a lot of the industry is even thinking or doing. It's amazing, right? So it was kind of, for them, it was like a glimpse into the near future. And again, for us, we kind of take it for granted a little bit, right? We're building these crazy things. We're like, yeah, this is how it works. But the rest of the idea, like, you hear about this and you hear pushback, like, no, programmers aren't going away anytime soon. I'm like, well, the traditional programmer is definitely going away.
That's right.
The agentic engineer is coming in. I think, and I think the takeaway from this particular presentation was every major team within a large corporation probably is going to need an agentic engineer to be part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is true, right? Because we're like, magicians almost. It's crazy. Like, wave our hands around for a minute and build. It just magically builds.
Reuven, I have a question for you real fast. What are you finding in your coaching sessions or in these interactions? Like, where are people getting stuck the most when it comes to being able to even get close to some of the stuff that you're building? I mean, you're obviously on like a unique level. I know there's other people in this community that are probably similar, but there's projects that were also, in my own world, where I feel like we just kind of get stopped and stuck a lot, which is coding, right, in its own right. But I just want to figure out, like, it seems so effortless for you. I know you're putting in a ton of sweat behind your screen, but like, where are you finding most people, most developers are being blocked, and how are you coaching them on overcoming some of those challenges?
The biggest blockage is the disconnect between the things that I take for granted after building things for 30 years versus this idea that I can just kind of magically wave my hands and it's going to build it without me having to understand the technical nuance, structure, architecture, whatever of what I'm building. And it's hard to articulate the things you just instinctively know because you've been doing it all your life. And that's the, I know it sounds kind of obvious, but that's the challenge that I think I'm having a little bit. There's this expectation that it's just, I make it look easy and then you're just going to magically be able to do it. It's an engineering process, like any field, it takes time and practice to hone your skills. I've been doing this particular form of engineering for about 4 years now, and you're seeing where I am after 4 years of becoming an agentic engineer, but that's already on top of the 20 something years I had started, right? So it's not magic. It's skill, right?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
I run into all sorts of moments throughout the day, especially after I eat lunch or I crash off of, a dopamine being depleted from having an awesome day, and I'm just like in bed, comatose because I just, vibe coded something, and like honestly, I genuinely feel like the major limitation is me at this point for so many different projects, and that like I get existential dread probably at least a couple times a week just thinking about the like the fact that I don't have 50 agents running 24/7. So I definitely like vibe with, you know, it's difficult, I think, for anyone with biological cognition to really like comprehend what like any of us are really capable of now. And I think, Claude Flow is a perfect example of that.
Yeah, built on a whim, just because, on top of all the other stuff. And,
Yeah,
and you know what?
those are the
Actually,
best. Those are the best projects.
yeah. You know what's the crazy? Because I put my booking link out there. People book my time, and I never know what my next call is going to be. The most interesting calls I get are like these random VCs that are paying for my time, which I kind of love because I kind of loathe VCs. But they're booking my time and paying my hourly rate, and then trying to convince me to create some bullshit startup. And it's like, why would I create that? I'm like, I'm by the time I build the company, raise the funding, get the product out the door, it's already antiquated. And that's the challenge we have with any startup that's being formed right now. Like, I see some bullshit startup from like Y Combinator, and it's like, well, I can just literally point my bot at that startup's product and have a verbatim version of it because it's probably some wrapper anyway, in literally an hour, right? And then the question is, the opportunity isn't technical anymore. It's momentum, or the ability for, it's like a distribution problem, right? It's the
Yes.
ability for you to get access to a particular customer base that you're trying to sell to, and that's obviously relationship or some kind of Reddit subgroup or something, but it's certainly not a technical problem.
Yeah.
Anyway,
And that
I'm
means
ranting.
the space is ripe for joint ventures between agentic engineering firms and a sea of opportunities out there where that distribution is already in place.
Probably.
And even distribution is shallow, because the fact is, like, if the technology gets to a point where people can prompt their way into product development all the way, I mean, we fast forward 10 years from now, I mean, now all of a sudden the distribution channel is the creator, right? Or the customer is now the creator, and you don't need to distribute anything because you're just building it yourself.
The moat is speed, development speed. If you can continuously ship and ship and ship new features, then duplicating people are always going to be one step behind. That's honestly one of the only ways that I think AI native companies are going to survive, is by adopting a vibe coding approach. And so like, I tend to see, like, in terms of some of these big like AI tools players, the evaluations companies being the big winners here, because evaluations and the testing that goes around like providing repeatable agentic experiences is orders of magnitude more than just like the initial creating of the product. So like I really would like to see continued investment on like the evaluation side that has the same like vibe coding aspects to it, right? Like there's I think you continue to see some of these the major cloud players, partnering with evaluation frameworks and things like that. But I think honestly, even them, it's difficult for them to iterate quickly, particularly if they have an existing business model. If you're not adopting a new business model, you're going to get replaced within the next 5 years.
5
Unfortunately,
years
you're right.
generous.
Yeah. 5 years is generous. And it's like I call it a cognitive dissonance. I feel terrible in a sense that the work that we're doing is going to be highly disruptive to a large portion of the industry. And when I say industry, I mean specifically the technical programming development industry that I'm obviously part of. But I don't have a solution to it. Like, I know that I can relatively easily replace entire teams in moments. And that sort of bothers me in the sense that I want those people to do well. I don't want them to be unemployed. I don't want to be the destroyer of people's livelihoods. But I also have this this immense capability to build stuff. So I'm just not sure, I don't know if the only real way we have this to solve that, at least in my opinion, is why we create the Agentics Foundation. Maybe there's a way for us to facilitate that transformation in a way that's more friendly, human, and not devastating. Or maybe I'm just kidding myself. Maybe that's just not possible, and it's going to be what it's going to be. I don't know.
I think that's a great topic, Reuven. I mean, it's that, this foundation, like someone was saying earlier, I think it might have been Chris, is that the long tail behind the knee is so very, very long. They are all the people that are not us, that we are at the bleeding edge of what is possible with this technology. And we have basically cast aside all of our doubts and preconceptions and just said, yeah, let's embrace it and adapt and change all those. And we're running at light speed and we accept that shit. This is all really radical stuff that makes us, you imagine something, you write a spec, you kick it off in your dev environment, and it starts building, and 7 hours later you're done. All that long knee behind the knee, that long tail, those people aren't there. Right. And so they actually have to, they haven't accepted, and they're actually resisting that this radical stuff is actually possible now. And I think this foundation we have here is potentially a great team of people that could actually help people understand that it's actually okay. It's safe. We can show you that it's okay. You can adapt. You can change. Maybe that's the value of what this organization is. And you can help teams and companies actually adapt to what is coming. Like Jed said, it's not 5 years. It's actually way less than that, And what Alexander was saying was like, what's the blocker here? Why are teams blocked? Well, the teams are blocked because they are resisting the fact that there's a monumental, fundamental shift that's happened. And this team of people this foundation people has actually realized that. And everybody else is kind of resisting. I sit down with teams of people, engineers and PMs, that are like, this, we're going to just continue the way we code, and we'll do some agentic coding. And then I come here, and everybody's like blitzing 10,000 lines of code every 7 minutes.
Yeah.
This organization is potentially at the most highest leading edge organization of people that could potentially help people to actually become okay with that and understand that this is what's coming.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if people are familiar with the unsupervised learning podcast, but there's the host for that show tends to grab folks from the leading AI labs quite frequently, and one of the key researchers for Claude 4 hopped on right before Claude 4 was released, or right around that time, and he kind of went through what they're seeing internally. I would highly recommend anybody to go and check that out, and I'll try to drop a link here. One of the things that really stuck out is how confident he was that AGI would be here by 2027, and particularly how each time he talked about how much progress they were making, and how like each of the trend lines, they're not bending, they're staying consistent. We're continuing to see exponential growth in cognitive ability, even on alignment research and mechanistic interpretability, which is potentially more important at this stage. But the incentives for all of these large labs is to become the monopoly or the big player in the space. And I tend to hear the conversation go from we're seeing all of this progress. We know AGI is coming. And then it's in the same tone, but they say, but I hope that people are working on these like critical pieces where AI is actually being implemented to like realize some social good or collective important problem. Like, you know, there are definitely teams leveraging AI to, you know, solve cure cancer and things like that. But even just some of these like other issues that we see and maybe experience every day, like there's not actually like VC money for that, because the VCs are more incentivized to invest in like capital focused ventures. So if you're working on a really difficult problem like Chris is, like, and I think this foundation is, then you guys are actually on the leading edge of impact. As much as all of these other people have billions of dollars, they're only kind of pushing they're pushing the frontier out. We're the ones actually delivering the value. And I think that's a really important distinction to keep in mind, especially, you know, if you're broke and the labor market's as trash as it is. Like that's, I think it's critical to keep that into perspective.
Yeah, that's good. That's a really good point. We got to wrap up. Thanks. You know, we really enjoyed having you guys on today, Everett, and the whole crew here. So, and Chris as well. And I feel bad with Chris. We kind of took all his time, and so again, that was mine. I was really excited this week about the whole swarm stuff and whatever. Yeah. So the question is, what am I gonna build next week? It's like Monday seems like a year ago. I think this is great. I really appreciate it. We're putting together the production team. I've nominated Rob as our executive producer. So Rob, thanks for taking on that role. We're going to try to put together, what I want to do is up the production value. So we're probably going to maybe move away from Zoom, but I like the part of Zoom where we can kind of collaborate and chat. Maybe there's other tools that allow us to do that. I don't know. I'm gonna let Rob figure that part out. And I just love doing these, as you know. And it's just the way to sort of articulate and, you know, percolating in my brain throughout the week. And it always is the best way to end the week, right? Because it gives me all these ideas from you, like seeing whatever worked on in the auth systems from Chris. Now I want to combine those two and do something new with it. So.
Well, that's what I was
I'm eager for an
too.
integration. I'm eager for an integration. I'm telling you right now.
Yeah.
Awesome.
No, we're your crew. If you like the tinkers, we love that. All right.
Yes.
So hopefully all the live casting stuff worked and my record button works, and if it didn't, whatever, this was a good discussion regardless. So thanks again. And if you're looking to support us, you know, we're working on a new site. Brad's going to be launching a new agentics.org, which is going to be more organized. We've got a sponsor in Disco and Tribal Scale who are going to sponsor the new website for us. I know you're paying money, and it's not obviously what you're paying it for. You're paying to sort of help us figure it all out. We're all volunteers, by the way. None of us make any money on this on the agentics.org. We're just doing it because we can. It should kind of be the antithesis of OpenAI. We want to be Open Agentics or something. That's it. Another great week. Thanks everyone.
Awesome, Reuven.
Wow.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
All right.
Yeah, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.